would you like to improve your health and keep your family safe? You're listening to the Healthy Home Hacks Podcast, where we firmly believe enjoying optimal health shouldn't be a luxury. Healthy Home Authorities and husband and wife team Ron and Lisa will help you create a home environment that will level up your health. It's time to hear from the experts. Listen in on honest conversations and gain the best tips and advice. If you're ready to dive in and improve your well-being and increase your energy, you're in the right place. All right, here are your hosts, biobiologists, authors, media darlings, vicarious vegans, and avocado aficionados, Ron and Lisa Barris.
Hi, friends, and welcome to Season 6 of the Healthy Home Hacks Podcast. And thank you for being patient as we took a short hiatus. I'm going to start off today's episode with an important question. Show of hands. How would you like to pause or reverse the aging process? Sure, technology has gotten good at helping us live longer, but not necessarily better. Have you heard of lifespan versus health span? Lifespan is the number of years someone lives from birth until death, while health span is the number of years someone is healthy without chronic and debilitating disease.
Which brings us to today's show. You've probably heard the buzz about a captivating wave of the anti-aging movement from influential celeb biohackers like Tom Brady, Jeff Bezos, and Brooke Burke. It's called biohacking. And if you think it's too good to be true, hold on to your telomeres and stay with us till the end. If you head back to episode 10, we discussed something called epigenetics. Epigenetics studies how the environment can modify how genes work without actually changing the genes themselves, which is important because researchers from Harvard Medical School believe that epigenetic changes, and not just changes to the DNA, affect aging. Biohacking offers an enticing promise that recent studies are beginning to substantiate. Emerging research showcases biohacking techniques that have aged mice and then made them younger.
While these results have yet to be replicated in humans, this exploration has peeled back the layers of aging, revealing the difference between biological age, rooted in cellular appearance based on biochemistry, and chronological age, the number of years since birth. Biohacking techniques have surged in popularity as they center on enhancing a pivotal aging factor called cellular function through precise lifestyle changes, interventions, and cutting-edge technologies. The ultimate objective is to strategically recalibrate the body's biology for targeted outcomes.
Joining us today is anti-aging expert and physiologist William Moore. William is a renowned expert in the field of wellness and longevity. Moore, who owns AdvancedYOU in Dallas, an anti-aging clinic, is here with us to discuss the biohacking phenomenon, how to decipher biological age versus chronological age, and unveil the most sought-after biohacks.
William, welcome to the show.
Thank you. How are you?
Good.
Good. Welcome, William. Thank you so much for being with us today.
We're ready to be younger for you, William. We want to be, let's do it.
Let's start. Where do we start?
Where do we start? We want to channel our inner Benjamin Buttons today and get some great anti-aging tips. So I know we have a lot of ground to cover, so let's just dive right in. William, can you explain something called exosome therapy to our listeners? What on earth is that?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. It's one of my very favorite topics. I'm so glad you asked. And I do quite a bit of it, actually. We do exosome infusion into the arm, and then we do exosome injections into the scalp for hair restoration. And I also do quite a bit of exosome injections into the corpora and the penis for the treatment of erectile dysfunction and just sexual performance in general. But first of all, I want to explain that exosomes come from stem cells. And they're the vesicles that are released by a stem cell. And they basically carry the blueprint and the growth factors, if you will, that tell the cells in our bodies how to regenerate. And so we've had stem cells around for a long time. We've been doing lots of experiments and uses of stem cells have become popular. But one of the drawbacks of a stem cell is that it contains the DNA of another human. That's one drawback. Another drawback is that you hear about stem cells and you think that you're getting stem cells, and you don't really, unless you really dive deep, you don't really know exactly the quality of some of the stem cells that you're getting.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the stem cells come from adult fat cells and they're very inexpensive. Sometimes they actually come from the umbilical cord of a newborn baby. Sometimes those stem cells are day zero stem cells, which means that they've been taken directly from birth, taken to a tissue bank, and then they've been harvested and then they're bottled and they're sold immediately. Sometimes those day zero stem cells are taken in vitro and they're replicated for second and third and fourth and fifth and sometimes even sixth generation of stem cells. So there's a lot of things that are going on with stem cells, and nothing bad, but exosomes is a very nice alternative that's a little bit easier on the pocketbook and gives some great outcomes. So,
well, quick question, William. So for our audience is not familiar with stem cells and the benefit of stem cells or whatever it might be, can you explain a little bit more about that and exosome? What's the difference? Is it the same thing? Because I'm sure this is probably going over some people's heads and they want to be younger.
That's what I was about to tell you. So a stem cell is the very beginning of how an exosome is born. So we use exosomes that come from stem cells that are from umbilical cords of day zero stem cells. That means that the baby has just been born. It was prearranged for the umbilical cord to be donated. It has already been screened. Generally, they like to use type O blood babies. Not that it makes
it. There's Lisa. She's showing off.
We don't think that it makes a difference in the blood type, but just to make sure that everything is safe and compatible, they even goes as far as to use type O blood from babies. But anyway, the stem cells they're taken to the tissue bank and they're harvested, and they begin to release what's called the exosome, which is the vesicle that comes off of the stem cell that tells the adjacent cells, as I said before, how to regenerate, carries the blueprint and carries the growth factors that help this happen. So they basically use a nanoparticle filter, and they basically pour the stem cells on top of this. This sounds very barbaric, but it's scientific in this. But they pour these stem cells and they let the exosomes fall through. And so they only count a certain size vesicle that comes off of these stem cells as an exosome. They're counted and they're bottled up and they're preserved. Sometimes they're freeze dried. Sometimes they're actually frozen under cryogenic temperatures. And then they're sent to the facility, and then we determine how we want to administer them. But even with exosomes, you can get exosomes that my cost are $100 a vial, and I can get exosomes that my cost are $5,000 a vial. So there's a big range of exosomes and the quality of exosomes and the count of exosomes. So exosomes are generally, just so you know, are generally counted in billions. And stem cells are generally counted in millions. You're going to have exponentially more exosomes in a vial than you are stem cells, but you have a lot more proteins and growth factors in a stem cell than you do in an exosome. But going back to what we said before, exosomes are safer because they don't carry the DNA. You have to figure this out. There's different ways to look at this. So the exosomes are counted in billions, and I like to see a treatment with generally somewhere between 30 and 50 billion exosomes. If I'm going to do someone's scalp, or if I'm going to do someone's face, or if I'm going to do someone's infusion, I'd like to see at least 50 billion. So that's kind of a number that.
When you do someone's face, is it like a filler, or is it more, how does that work?
So that's a great question. So I use a device that's called Dermafrac. And Dermafrac is a micro-channeling device. So it's not micro-needling. I'm sure that you know what micro-needling is. Micro-needling is when you puncture holes and you create injury with the micro.
That's like the vampire facial, right? Is it the vampire?
Not really. That's using platelet-rich plasma that's been drawn, spun out, and they pull the platelet-rich plasma out and they re-inject it into the face. But this is a device that it creates tiny little holes that are a 0.5 millimeter deep into the tissue. And under the pressure of vacuum, the exosomes are placed right into what we call the basement membrane or the dermal epidermal junction, which is the place where we want to put serums for them to do the most good in this. So you can just take these exosomes and you can inject them with micro injections, but it's a little bit barbaric. It works. but you don't know what depth you're going to get them at because everyone doesn't have the same injection technique. Some people may be better or worse at this micro injection. But with the dermafrac device that we use, we put the exosomes into it, and then we deliver them to a 0.5 millimeter depth tissue over the entire area that we're going to treat. I have some amazing photographs that I can show you of my patients.
Oh, wow.
Someone's hands that I can send to you and let you take a peek at that if you'd like.
The hands go, because like hands, they say if you want to know someone's age, look at usually their neck and their hands, right? The hands start to show.
Yeah, I have a very famous plastic surgeon. Of course, I'm not going to share names, but a famous plastic surgeon in the DFW area. It's very skeptical about everything. And he came in to have an exosome treatment. We did his scalp, we did his face, we did his neck. And he messaged me about 4 to 5 weeks later and he said, I have never seen something make as much change in my skin as this exosome treatment has done. And he has done 2 more since then. And he's doing the big vials of exosomes where they're like several $1,000s per vial. And he just did his last one last week, or his third one last week. And he told me that nothing has he ever done made as much of a difference as this exosome treatment did.
Wow. And he's a plastic surgeon.
He's a very reputable plastic surgeon that has access to anything that he wants.
Wow.
How many treatments do you need for this, William? Is it like 3, 6?
Changes in one treatment. And it also depends on what the count is, of course. You can have a lower exosome count or a higher exosome count, and you can have exosomes that come from 2nd or 3rd generation stem cells from the umbilical cord, or stem cells that are exosomes that come from adipose tissue. So there's so many variations, but with good exosomes, good quality exosomes, you can see a nice change in the sexual performance, in the skin, and in just one session.
Are people now, because I was thinking, gosh, when we were born, if we knew about that and donated our own umbilical cord to ourselves, right? And then had that cryo frozen, whatever, and then could access that later. Are people doing that now?
Yeah, actually, yeah. So my niece and nephew, they were born in 2004 and 2005. And my sister-in-law had their umbilical cords cryogenically stored. Okay. And so at some point when we have more advances, they'll be able to take the stem cells that are their own stem cells for their own day zero stem cells that have never been manipulated. And they'll be able to maybe one day grow a new kidney or a new liver or whatever.
Sky's the limit there, huh? So when you have a client who comes in, do you pick the exosome based on their budget? Like if they're like, hey, I only want to spend this much, they're going to get a lower quality, or like the plastic surgeons, like sky's the limit, get me the best.
There's basically 2 different levels of exosomes that we can choose from. The ones that I use, I actually use a 50 billion vial of exosomes that are day 0. They've never been through a replication, or the stem cells have never been replicated. Those are the exosomes that I always use because I believe in those. Mm-hmm. It's not quite ready to spend that type of money on it. I would prefer that they just not waste their money, because I don't want to give them a procedure that's not going to do what they want it to do, because I don't want to build false hope in someone. But we can do the exosomes treatment. But the company that we're working with, they have just taken the DNA out of the stem cell. And so they have another product that is a whole stem cell with no DNA.
Wow.
And so I have done a combination between those 2 different products on this particular plastic surgeon. So one time out of the 3, we also included some of the acellular, no DNA stem cell. But I don't use whole stem cells with the DNA. And then there's just chance of problems. And
with that, would you be, if someone had an illness, would you be potentially, what is the word? Like
make it worse? Is that what
you're potentially like exposing yourself to that danger, so to speak, making yourself susceptible.
There's concerns right now in the medical community that even giving someone an exosome or a stem cell could potentially help a cancer cell grow. And, we don't have enough research to shed. It's infancy. So it's new. So we're still learning things. There's still lots of clinical trials that are going on that are looking at these things. So sometimes when it's new, you have to take some risks. I personally have done lots of exosome infusions in my arm. I'm very proud to say that I have not had COVID since I started doing exosomes infusion in my arms. I'm not saying that this is a treatment for COVID. It's not. I haven't had COVID, so I haven't used it as a treatment. But I feel like it has kept me healthy through this pandemic. I do in regular infusions and
Wow. So you can do it as an infusion, and then that kind of works like as the whole body versus like your face injection would plump up, I'm guessing, and give a more youthful appearance. Okay.
Create collagen and the deeper tissue and so forth. But yeah, so it reduces inflammation. It can stop the cytokine storm, and it can boost the
There you go, COVID.
activity.
Right.
And so you put it in the arm to boost your immune system.
Boost the immune system and heal things that are injured inside the body.
Because it's coming from such a newborn that wouldn't have all of this exposure to toxicity, correct?
That is the thought, is that whenever you have stem cells from an adult, that you run the risk of having stem cells that have DNA that have been, DNA, as I heard you mention telomeres earlier. So DNA goes through changes in our bodies. So we don't have the same exact, there's damage that occurs as we get older. So it would be better to have them definitely from a day zero newborn baby rather than an adult. Wow.
Do you see a lot of, going back to like when you were talking about stem cell, because, as a girl, I go, into spas and all the products. Oh, this has stem cells, this has stem cells. And, you're not told anything beyond that. Like you were saying at the beginning, do you think there's a lot of, like we call it in our industry, greenwashing? There's a lot of greenwashing with products, like cleaning products or you name it. Is there skin washing or whatever the word would be that you see go on? Yeah.
There are a few exosome products that, you call to a med spa and you say, I would like to have exosomes. And they say, yes, I can do exosomes and we can do your entire face for $600. I just called the clinic down the street and they said that my entire face was $7,000. A lot of people don't ask the questions and they just say we're the cheapest one because an exosome is an exosome, but they're not. They're not. So there are some products that are out there and they are FDA cleared to be used in the skin, but they won't necessarily do the same thing that these more expensive, higher count, cleaner day zero exosomes can do for you.
Right.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Okay. Well, we learned a lot about exosomes. I have some other questions for you too. Yeah. So wait,
okay. Whole show just on that.
Right. But William, we are familiar with the hyperbaric oxygen chambers. In fact, the integrative medical center that we go to has several, and we know how it's used on cancer patients. Can you explain to our listeners what these are and what the benefits are of using them?
Yes, I have one and I love it. I get in my hyperbaric chamber after work every day.
You're like Michael Jackson then, right? Did Michael Jackson do that all the time?
He slept in one, which is not good for you. That much time in one. People say that you should sleep in it, but more research shows that we really shouldn't spend that much time in a hyperbaric chamber, that we don't need to, that we get as much benefit out of a 60 to 90 minute session as someone would if they were to sleep in it, because the body becomes resilient and it stops making change. So there's no reason to spend that much time in there. But first of all, one thing I want to say about hyperbaric chambers is that you really have to ask your questions about hyperbaric chambers as well, because they go to different pressures. So we need to know what pressure that the hyperbaric chamber is going to go to. The lightest pressure that I generally see is 1.3 ATA, which is atmosphere absolute, it's 1.3 times atmosphere pressure.
Okay.
The studies that you're going to ask me about later on that talk about telomere lengthening, they used a 2.0 atmosphere pressure ATA. So you have to make sure that your chambers are actually getting to the pressure that they need to get to be able to cause some of these changes to occur. So we ask the pressure that your chamber can reach. That's the first thing. Second is that you want to make sure that they do have a good supply of oxygen inside there, because what we want to do is we want to use this pressure to take oxygen, 95% oxygen, through a nasal cannula. And under the pressure, we actually are able to liquefy the oxygen gas, and it absorbs better into the plasma. And then it's able to be taken through the body, attached to the red blood cells, into hypoxic areas of the body that generally don't get very much oxygen. This is where we're able to create so much change. Things from dementia. People that have dementia, sometimes they have vascular dementia, which means that they don't get enough blood flow to the brain. And a lot of times that's from people having sleep apnea. And maybe they're not getting the blood flow and the oxygen to the brain while they're sleeping. So their brain is not recovering.
Right.
If we can get them into a chamber and we can do some oxygen under pressure, then maybe we can make some changes. I want to tell you something that's interesting, that There's a published study that looks at stroke patients. And generally, whenever we see studies on patients who have had strokes, it's a very acute phase. It's very soon after the stroke has occurred that we're looking at changes in the brain. They usually sometimes say within a few weeks, you're going to see most of the changes that's going to occur. But this particular study looked at stroke patients that were 6 months to 3 years post-stroke. And whenever you have a clinical study, you have to have a placebo group.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to have a placebo group when you're doing a hyperbaric chamber treatment, because your patient or your person in the study is going to know whether or not they had pressure.
Yeah, that's right.
So you at least have to have some pressure, even in the placebo group, or they're going to know that they were a part of the placebo group.
Right.
So what they'll do with a hyperbaric chamber study is that they will have the nasal cannula on, but they won't necessarily put oxygen through. They may just put air through it.
Gotcha.
So that the person can't tell the difference between when they have a 95% oxygen delivery or just air, which would be 21% oxygen, which is in the atmosphere.
Okay.
And they can make them have enough pressure to maybe make their ears have a little bit of a pop, but maybe not take them to the pressure in which the changes will occur. Well, in this particular study that was 6 months to 3 years, every single patient in the study, in both the placebo group and in the group that actually received the 95% oxygen with the pressure, had changes in neuroplasticity. So their brains got better.
Wow.
This was the placebo group even got it because even that small amount of pressure that they were put under, the 21% oxygen, which is the atmospheric percentage of oxygen, they still were able to get changes in the brain function.
Wow.
So it's just what hyperbaric chambers can do is just amazing.
Wow, that's incredible. So you sleep, or when you get home from work, you do a session every day.
It's my chamber's at work.
Oh, it's at work. Okay.
It's at work. So when I finish for the day, I take my work into the chamber with me.
Right. Because you can do stuff in there, right?
Yeah, you can do stuff in there. And so my chamber is large. It holds 2 full-size adults.
Oh, wow.
It has a window where you can watch the TV if you wanted to outside. I have a closed caption, turn on the TV if I need to watch the news or whatever I'm doing. But generally, I try and get caught up on work or paperwork or whatever. Sometimes it's charting, whatever it may be. But I get in there every day after work when I'm at home. That's part of what I do is
wow. That is so great. What differences have you noticed? I mean, is it gradual, or do you start noticing it right away?
Well, first of all, I'm pretty healthy, so I don't really have any signs of aging just yet. I don't have any problems that I think I would notice changes for. So what I think that I'm doing is I'm creating vascularity. I'm making my tissue, my fingers, my toes. I am actually type 1 diabetic. I have juvenile diabetes, so I wear an insulin pump and a glucose sensor. So I know that over the course of my lifetime, having juvenile diabetes, that I have had things happen. The high levels of glucose is like sandpaper. It's doing damage to everything inside your body. So I'm hoping that I'm having repair that things that I can't see just yet, but it's repairing them. And then my mother actually suffers from vascular dementia, and so does her sister. And so I worry that may be something coming down the pipeline towards me as well.
Oh, gotcha.
So I'm trying to focus really heavy on things that I can do to keep my brain healthy.
Yeah.
I believe that hyperbaric chambers is one of the most important things that you can do to keep good oxygen and good blood flow to your brain.
Wow. It's too bad insurance doesn't cover that, of course. But I know here, I think at our center round, I want to say it's $250 a session. It's not extravagantly expensive. Would you feel as soon as you did one, wow, I feel really energized? What's the feeling? Energized
afterwards. People that do their very first one sometimes have a hard time sleeping that night.
Because they're so.
And it does some things to your gut the first couple of times as well. But HBOT, hyperbaric oxygen chambers, actually, because of the pressure, detoxifies the gut. So that's one of our most toxic areas in our body. So hyperbaric chamber is a great way to detox.
Isn't it 70% of our immune system lives in our gut?
Something like that. Yeah.
It's something like that. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That is really interesting. Everything we've discussed so far, which is only 2 things, have been so interesting.
That's right.
We have a long list to go, guys. And speaking of, a good segue to our next question. What is pulsed electromagnetic field therapy, PEMF, and how does this help in the anti-aging process?
I can tell you. So first of all, you probably have seen people talk about grounding. This is a new trend.
Oh, yeah. That's what we do. We're biobiologists. So we are actually certified to test homes for electromagnetic radiation. And we used to actually do that. So it's a big part of what we teach our readers as well. And lots of shielding techniques and remedies and things like that.
And people think that it's crazy, but it's not crazy. It's very logical science behind it. It's just that sometimes we just have to have it explained to us before we actually understand it and know the reasons why we need to do it. So going back to when I was 2017, however, I was 34 years old, I broke my leg in 5 places. And my doctor sent me home with a PEMF blanket to go around my leg. And at that time, I was uneducated on the subject. And I think I used it, but I thought it was my insurance paid for it. I mean, it's FDA cleared.
Oh, wow.
It is FDA cleared to heal bone. It heals cells. It heals tissue. So, I mean, we know it's published, it's studied. We know if insurance pays for it, it's been definitely studied because they would try and fight that as much as they possibly could.
Right.
I was sent home with this pad and I put it around my leg. I don't know how much it did because I don't know how fast my leg would have healed with or without it. But
right.
This is, we do have published studies. We know that it does work. Let me tell you a little bit about how it works.
Okay.
So our Earth has a magnetic field to it. And the magnetic field of our Earth has declined approximately 70% over the past 3,000 years. And I'm not going to go into all that because that's not really important for this conversation. But our magnetic energy for this Earth has declined dramatically. And 3,000 years ago, 4,000, 5,000, however many million years ago that we go back as humans, we were on the ground. Our feet were planted on the ground, no shoes, no rubber soles, no cars, no tires, no sidewalks, or buildings, whatever it is. We were on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get on the ground any longer. We don't get that magnetic energy that we need from the Earth. And we are electrical beings. Our bodies function off of electrical energy. And we were designed to use this magnetic energy. And so we have PEMF beds in the clinic. And I primarily, they're great for tissue healing, for resetting the batteries, if you will, inside your body. They're great for relaxation, for mental clarity. But I think two of the most important things that we can get from the bed is that we use it prior to HBOT, our hyperbaric oxygen therapy, and we use it prior to exercise with oxygen. Because one of the most important things that this bed does is the electromagnetic energy makes your red blood cells become negatively charged, which means that they will repel each other. So your red blood cells are in clumps, and I don't mean dangerous clumps. I don't mean clots. I mean clumps. And so what happens is the red blood cells that are inside in the very center of these little clumps, they don't get to carry oxygen because they're not exposed to oxygen. So we separate them with the PEMF mat, that when we take you in to do exercise with oxygen, which is where you're breathing 95% oxygen with a mask and doing 10 minutes of cardiovascular on a bicycle with 3 sprints, or if we take you and put you inside of the hyperbaric chamber, then our red blood cells have separated and we're able to carry more oxygen. So I always do a PEMF session prior to getting in my hyperbaric chamber bed myself.
Oh, wow. You're the poster child for biohacking.
And another thing that the bed does is the mat does is that it makes your body approximately a pH of 7.3, which is alkaline. And so it does alkaline your body for about 12 to 13 hours.
Oh, wow.
So it is great if people can have a PEMF bed at home, and you can buy them that go under your sheet, and they're programmed. You can program it with a timer for it to do 15 minutes or 30 minutes at a certain time at night so that it will help you sleep. And there's maybe one setting, there's like mine has different settings. So there's one setting for relaxation. There's another setting for vitality. And then you can have it turn on just 30 minutes before your alarm clock goes off in the morning. And you can get another PEMF session where it stimulates your body and makes your body wake up and super.
Wow. And it's like a thin pad that would go under your sheet and then plug into the wall.
Yes.
Okay. That is real. I've never even heard of it, which is crazy. How wrong.
Yeah, they're not that
No,
expensive.
I've not heard of that. No. And we skipped over a little bit to exercise with oxygen therapy, EWOT.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Wait, I wanted to hear what he was going to say about that.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say that these PEMF mats, they're not that expensive.
They're not. Okay.
Yeah, they're anywhere between $2,000 to $5,000. I mean, I guess that is a pretty penny, but people that are biohackers, they spend a lot more money on things, on supplements and coffees and all kinds.
Yeah, exactly. Add up your latte, your venti every day. Is this, I would assume a lot of sports stars, athletes use this for quick recovery.
I'm seeing that they're using it for recovery. I'm seeing the big sports teams are using it.
Yeah.
Rows of them in training centers. They're becoming very popular. The science is there, but people are just now waking up and beginning to its science.
Because it's all moving. I mean, we've had a couple podcasts on energy and frequency healing and people that have clinics that just do that. It's really fascinating how the medical community is kind of heading that way as this technology comes. It's just, like you said, we're electrical beings. Of course, we could handle illnesses and ailments with energy. So it's really incredible.
And I do believe, you mentioned earlier about shielding. I mean, I do believe that there are things that happen to us with our cell phones. And the cell phone providers are going to argue with us about that. And the people that manufacture cell phones are going to tell us that there's all kinds of studies that say that that's not possible. But I know that when this thing is hot in my hand and when it's hot against the side of my face,
oh yeah,
something is happening
right
to my body from these cell phones. And so using something like a PEMF mat can reset and can recharge and charge you appropriately. We need that
now with so much. Yeah, we use shielding devices for our phone and we're hardwired in our home and our office. And we do airplane mode constantly. So whenever the phone's not in use, go to airplane. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do, just kind of common sense to reduce your exposure. But most people don't, like you said, because they're being told by the industry. And there are many, many, many peer-reviewed studies, but people aren't being told about that. They only hear the industry saying, oh, it's safe, it's safe, it's safe. But that's a whole nother show. But yeah, I'm all about doing whatever you can to reduce your exposure and then integrating these modalities that you're talking about, like together. It's just, we live in a really toxic world today. We really have to be proactive in every area. If we want to, like we talked about, have a great health span, not just lifespan.
You know, I heard someone the other day say, I want to add life to my years. And if I can add years to my life, that's even better.
Oh.
But I really want to add life to my years.
Right.
So you live you don't want to be the person that you see in the grocery store on the scooter if you don't have.
No.
I mean, you want to maintain your muscle mass. You want to keep your body functioning properly. You want to keep your cognitive functions.
Yeah.
If you're gonna be here, you don't want to be bedridden and
bedridden in front of a TV all day, like we see so much, and people have gotten really accustomed and used to thinking that they're going to end up like that and not realizing that we have power and there's technology. But we do have to be proactive. Yeah, I agree with that. I'd rather live shorter and healthier than longer and miserable. And I'm sure most people listening would agree with that.
I think we have a few more topics. So real quick, I asked earlier, so EWOT, 30 seconds or less. You kind of did that before, but exercise without oxygen therapy. We know what oxygen therapy is. So you said this is on the bike, and what was the process again?
Yeah, so we do the PEMF mat first for 10 minutes to make the red blood cells separate. And then we take them directly over to the bicycle and we put a mask on. Everyone has their own mask. They wash it themselves. We tell them how to sanitize it between treatments. And they do 10 minutes on the bicycle with 3 sprints. And that is to super oxygenate your body and to push oxygen to these hypoxic tissues again, as we discussed with the hyperbaric chamber earlier. So they're doing similar things, but we're pushing oxygen with both. But there is pressure, of course, with the hyperbaric chamber. There's no pressure with the exercise with oxygen. I think that they're both important.
William, not to put you on the spot, you said every day I do the hyperbaric oxygen chamber, but you didn't say every day you do EWOT.
I don't do that.
I'm joking.
Once or twice a week is enough for
once or twice a week. Okay. So that's something that you would have to go to a clinic like yours to get, right? Because you can't, how would you get the oxygen at home if you had your own treadmill, say? You couldn't do that, right?
Well, it's an oxygen concentrator that fills up a big it's almost like a vinyl bag because you exercise so fast. An oxygen concentrator, which is what when you have emphysema, and you see your grandparent who was a smoker forever, and they have that creates oxygen. That is an oxygen concentrator, but it doesn't put out enough oxygen fast enough for exercise. And so we have to use one of those to capture it looks like a large balloon of oxygen. And then the person breathes it down till it's empty during their 10-minute session. And then it fills it back up. And then it drains again when the next person comes in.
Oh, wow.
It's a one-way valve on it so that you can't breathe into this bag. So it's
right.
And so the bag is always clean, but they're always breathing oxygen from there. It's 95% oxygen. And it takes about 10 to 12 minutes for someone to breathe all the oxygen out of it.
Wow. So you have people that come in every week and do that?
Once or twice a week. Our programs we put together a biohacking program for you.
Okay.
And we will do strength training. We'll do exercise with oxygen. We do red light and infrared bed therapy, MF, the hyperbaric chambers, that sort of thing. So we'll put together. But we also do, and I may be jumping the gun with this. Maybe you're going to ask me something about metabolism. But we also, before we start someone on one of these programs, we like to know what their metabolism is like. And you mentioned earlier their biological age. So we do some metabolic testing
I saw that on your website. Okay. So you assess because I could have obviously a lower metabolism than Ron. And so my treatment would be different, obviously based on my size and everything too, but that would get a different treatment than say someone my size who has a higher metabolism, right?
We do see things from the test. Some blood gases are exchanged, and it gives us some insight into how your mitochondria works, whether you have an efficient mitochondria system or maybe an inefficient. And so we do get a lot of information from this metabolic test. But we're looking at a lot of factors here. So we're looking at your energy systems. We can determine if you burn more carbohydrates, proteins, or fats at rest than the next person, because we're not always the same. And so when you go to a personal trainer, they typically just give you their diet that they've come up with. You may think that they're giving you a personalized diet, but it's pretty much a cookie cutter diet that everyone gets the same diet from this same trainer. They're always going to give you, this is their diet. Well, when we do a metabolic test, we know exactly what your ratio of your macros are that you burn while you're at rest. We find out a lot about you at rest, about what's happening with your metabolism, but especially with your nutrients. And so then we put you on the bicycle and we take you up to maximum heart rate. And we look at your energy systems. As your heart rate increases, we look at how efficient your body is at changing its form of energy. And so we may think, let's just say that you're a marathon runner. You may think that when your heart rate is between a certain range, that you need to be supplying it with glucose, because that's what your running coach told you when you were in college, is that you need to carry drinks that have glucose in them.
Right.
Maybe you burn more fat. Maybe you burn a combination of fat and protein. Everyone's the same. But for all of history of athletics, we've all been told that we were kind of the same and that this is what happens. But we can find out that maybe we're not by doing these tests.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, I would like to get that test.
Huge profile on you. And then we actually, the data is analyzed by a nutritionist. We have an app that the client goes through, and they answer lots of questions about what they like to eat, what foods they don't like. And then the dietitian puts together, based on your specific utilization of these different macros, a customized diet for you based on the foods that you like and on what we found out about you in the...
That is so... Ron, we got to go to Dallas.
Right. We got to go now.
I need to get this done. We're both vegan. So yeah, we have a pretty strict diet, but maybe we're finding out that we're not eating enough, something we had no idea.
You could find out some things out that you don't know. You could.
So you mentioned really quick, far and near infrared light therapy, but you talk about something called photobiomodulation. PBM light therapy. Okay, what is that? Is that infrared therapy?
It is a combination of red light and near infrared light. So going back to high school physics, we had the Roy G. Biv, the spectrum of light that comes, the visible light. All the way on the far side of it is red light. And then just past the visible spectrum of light, we have the near infrared. which is a longer wavelength. I don't want to get into too much physics here, but it's a longer wavelength. Longer wavelengths penetrate deeper into human tissue.
Okay.
So the red light, which is what most beds are. So if you go to the red light bed at your gym, you're most likely getting into a bed that is about 630 nanometers. That's red light. That's one of the more common wavelengths of red light. It's pretty much just hitting your hair, skin, and your nails. If you get into the near infrared, where you're in the 800s to the low 900s, which is the wavelength, it's invisible. So the interesting thing is when you see our bed, it has rows of lights, but every fourth one is lit up, and then there's 3 that are not lit. And people are like, your bulbs are out. They're not out. They're invisible. So they're in the invisible spectrum of light. But if you look at them,
that's interesting.
If you look at them, if you hold your cell phone up and look at the camera, you'll see that they're on. But you can't see them with your naked eye because they're invisible.
Gotcha.
And so light creates lots of reactions in the human body. And this has been published and studied for 20 to 30 years, I think closer to 30 years, about how the body can react to certain wavelengths of light and how energy is created and how it can increase mitochondrial activity and create more ATP, which is our primary energy source. But we need different depths. And so red light is very shallow. And the next level of near infrared goes into the muscles. And the next level can go into the organs. And then the longest wavelength can go deeper. It can actually go down to the bone.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. You explained that so well. I feel like these red light therapy centers are popping up everywhere nowadays, and they just say near and far, and no one really questions it. They're like, okay.
You got to find out what your wavelengths are. You have to know if it's actually because it's just so confusing. You
explain that very clearly. That makes sense.
They can buy a $10,000 bed, or they can buy a $120,000 bed. I'm talking about the facility. And, a lot of times facility owners try and cheap it out because they don't think that people are going to ask the questions that they need to ask. So be sure that you find out what wavelengths and the depth. What
wavelengths? Yeah. Because people think, they think they're sweating. I would say the majority of people think you go in there to sweat and detoxify. That's what I thought for sure. And that, it's doing something, these lights, and you're just sweating and okay, good. I sweat. It worked,
That's being used to increase your metabolism to burn calories. And it does burn calories, just like a cryotherapy chamber. It burns calories as well. You can burn 500 to 800 calories in a 3-minute cryo session.
Yeah. Ron braved that.
I did brave that. Yeah, I did. And then I guess I could have eaten a cupcake afterward and I'd have been fine, right? Is that true? Like you literally burn 600, 800 calories?
Anywhere between 5 and 800 is what I generally read.
You earned that. Okay. You earned that.
Right.
It's not for the faint of heart, right? That's like, I can do the red light therapy. The cryo, no, it's too cold.
Well, the red light bed that we have is not warm. So there's no heat that's created. So the ones that you're talking about they're made to be saunas.
A sauna. That's what we did, Ron. We did the sauna.
Saunas.
Yeah.
So what we have is not that. And the reason that we don't have a red light sauna is you can get those really inexpensively for your house. And so we just didn't think that it was something that we needed to have in the clinic because they're very common and they're all about the same. Mm-hmm. If it's got red light inside there, near infrared light, and it's making you hot, it's probably working. Mm-hmm. It's not the same with the photo biomodulating bed.
Right. Okay. So you don't sweat and you're not hot in that. It's work. Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. Really interesting. I'm learning so much.
Well, thank you, William, for being with us today.
Thank you, William, for being with us today. This was very enlightening. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
We could talk for hours. You can learn more about William's services at AdvancedYOU.com.
And we'll have all the links in the show notes at ronandlisa.com/podcast. And until next time, bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, guys.
This episode of the Healthy Home Hacks podcast has ended, but be sure to subscribe for more healthy living strategies and tactics to help you create the healthy home you've always dreamed of. And don't forget to rate and review so we can continue to bring you the best content. See you on the next episode.